Mission fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your old dumb nullsec war stuffed out #1. Anunnaki Keep Star is next, and then come on.
There, then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive-bombed a Megathron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
the reason that this keep started and get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
Hell.
Hi, sick.
I can tell you very clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. Like,
White daddy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, capsuleers and capsulettes, welcome everyone to another episode of Untethered. It is a beautiful Sunday evening if you're my buddy Phantomite. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon for me and LB, I'm assuming. And we're your hosts.
There's some sun, yep.
On this lovely Sunday. And we're joined by Rav, an epic low-secker. Hello, Rav.
Hello, nice to be here.
Nice to have you, and hello, gang. How are we all doing today?
I reckon everybody is going to be extremely happy, especially if they took part in yesterday's Dread Brawl.
Oh, you
well,
think so?
Depending on which side they were on.
You think so? I don't know. I guess we're just going to jump right into it. So, obviously, our top story of today is the fact that yesterday marked the first of what will hopefully be many, many, many massive Dread Brawls in low-sec.
Especially with the pricing updates, with the insurance.
For sure. So this one was almost 800 people, just under a trillion-isk lost overall. What's going on here? Tell me the story.
So many things. It was a bit chaotic in the moment, certainly, but on Team C there, the brute force solutions, hobos, and Try have been fighting Malden Heath for the last few weeks. It's kind of started from against Parallaxis. BFG and Parallaxis were quite friendly at a time, and then there was a falling out and some flipping tables, as there is in Eve, which makes Eve so good. And so it's been a series of escalating fights going on. BFG will cover ref all of Parallaxis' stuff, and then on the weekend there'll be some forms and some bat phones. Parity on subcaps hasn't really been there until Try recently moved in sort of 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Not to kind of, I know that this might come across as a sort of a diss, but for Try, are they kind of along the lines of just a group of players who attach to other groups' conflicts these days?
These days?
I'm not so sure. I mean, they've always kind of done their own thing. I know I'm kind of in Purple Helmeted Warriors mainly in RC, which sort of came in on this fight as well. But we, worked with Try in the past, but yeah, they've always been quite independent. So I think when they've recently got booted out of Nullsec, they've sort of pitched up in Malden Heath and joined in with Bums and BFG, kind of fighting Parallaxis.
And so now, as far as like the sides go on here, just to put it out there for everybody. So it's Parallaxis, that's the 91 people here. And then Try, Space Hobos, and Brute Force Solutions. Shadow Cartel, you said, was a bat phone, right? And so was RC?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So
in response, Parallax brought Snuffed Out to get
on. The bat phones on this side were a response to Snuffed Out. So we've been kind of watching from the sidelines. We've set up a few times, we as in RC and Shadow Cartel, and have kind of been waiting for the right opportunity to drop a bunch of dreads and have a good fight and give someone a spanking at least. And there's been a couple of false starts. A couple of weeks ago, Parallax has had a large dark side Barg fleet hidden away. So
not hidden enough, right?
Not hidden enough from me. And so we couldn't. Yeah, the subcap fight wasn't going to be a subcap fight on that, so that was a kind of false start, and there's been a couple of other opportunities that didn't go off. However, on Wednesday, we saw Snuff move out from Amamaki into Aralgrund. And
it's a system I've never heard of.
Yes, they tried to be sneaky about it and went to a few different systems first, but then they ended up in Aralgrund. But I'm tenacious and I followed. So seeing that,
you knew they were coming.
So we knew they were coming, so I was like, right, we can pull the trigger here. So that's when we and Shadow Cartel decided to form a reasonably large dread bomb here. I think we had 100. I think I had it out 120 dreads.
Handed out.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So this was an investment.
I've just had a rummage in my around in my ass, Yeah, so this is all handouts from the cash.
Yeah. The extra 120 dreads down the back of your sofa, Rav.
Yeah, but we we wanted to keep this kind of on the down low. Otherwise, because we wanted Snuff to commit, and commit they did. Yes.
What are there any sort of logistical tips that you can kind of give us around trying to keep some secrets, trying to keep some numbers sort of hidden in this thing? Because obviously, particularly the side you were on was made up of a wider range of groups than the bulk of the other team, which must make it exponentially harder to try and keep any secrets. are there any sort of special measures that you can take, like any kind of ways that you can actually compartmentalize any information here to kind of try and give you a leg up?
I mean, it's a difficult one because I mean every group is a leaky ship. You know, for a group like Snuff or Big Ab or whoever, or they're going to have eyes and spies in other groups. They're going to know what's going on. I know. So for all the RC guys that we brought on board, I was just directly messaging people that I knew, or I hoped were not spies. And I pinged out for our kind of main line members just to join a unidentified shadow cartel fleet at a certain time. And likewise on Shadow's side, it was a kind of SIG supplied the Dread pilots.
Mm.
And obviously so we handed out these a couple of hours before the fight, told everyone to log off and try and keep the systems clear, just because there was eyes obviously flying around just in case. But yeah, we didn't get spotted, at least I don't think we did.
Would I be right in guessing that the bulk of the dreads on your side didn't all come from one solar system?
Oh no, they were spread between a few systems. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Well, in which case, I gotta give it to Snuff and Parallaxis for going in with essentially incomplete intel. Which for there are some groups in EVE who kind of seem to have a history of refusing to do anything without complete intel coverage of the enemy, which just seems cowardly.
And there are some
absolutely.
groups who also have a history of being a little bit too cocky and getting in over their heads from time to time. I think this might be one of those situations.
There was a little bit of pre-smugging from some Snuff members when they initially jumped in.
What?
But that kind of
snuffed out?
Like what? Like doing what? What did they do?
All the boogeyman has arrived, I think was mentioned. But it
of
got
course.
quite silent when a couple of sinos went up and 100 dreads came in. So.
So the lesson here is never smack until you're certain you've won the fight.
Yeah, it's a good lesson to take away from this. I think it's a shame. Snuff did manage to extract probably about 35 dreads. So
okay.
Which a lot going on.
Good
Trying to spread newts and things, but it's a good result for Team C there on this one.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that I've seen a Team C like this beat up on Snuffed Out. Do you have any concerns of over farming them to where they just stop dropping their dreads on everything that moves?
I think they'll keep coming back. To be honest, they're fairly tenacious as a group, but it might give them pause for thought next time.
That's good. As long as there's always wood for the wood chipper,
Yeah, you don't really expect to, no shadow cartels come in. They wouldn't expect shadow cartel to have so many dreads nearby. It's not a a scenario that they would really have overly considered, but now they will.
Rav, how long does it take you to source and prepare over 100 dreads for handout?
Oh, just a few minutes, bud.
Yeah, you just open trade and then just
someone gives them to you.
Now these are all built in situ basically over a couple of months.
Oh, so you do a lot of capital production then?
Yeah. So the with BFG and Parallaxis, my e-business partner, I guess, we had an indie park in Malvern Heath for a while. That so capital production was something we were doing on the side.
Is it just you that you and your characters that can build 100 and something dreads? or is that more of a team effort?
It's just me and one of my buds. Obviously, have quite a lot of accounts, so
Okay.
A
Okay,
partnership.
fair enough.
it's not out of the realms of possibility to solo build them, but you just have to have the accounts and slots to do it, and the willpower for the logistics, because there's obviously a lot of bulky materials involved.
What kind of loot values as the people to hold the grid do you kind of get back from this?
I think there's about at least 80 to 100 bill of loot.
Okay, how many dreads does like a 80 bill cover these days? Because you were T2 fitting all these dreads. This wasn't like poverty dreads or anything, right?
No poverty allowed. When
Yeah.
when you're fighting group like Snuff, they're not bringing poverty, so you have to.
No.
Everyone has to be in pods. Ships have to be fitted properly. Otherwise,
8 to 10
they can't be
dreads.
your obsolete dreads now, which your regular revelations. Although there's a few, but as we know, the standard now is Sinitras and Rev Navies. So they're running you kind of 8 bill a piece.
And given that, I mean, did you ask people to insure before they went in or something like that, or?
Well, of
No, I
course.
forgot to do that.
No way.
Okay. Given that you kind of work on plenty of capital building now, do you think that the insurance changes are going to make much notable difference to dread prices? Well, to not going to make a difference to the prices, obviously. You think it's going to make much difference to the viability of fights like this?
I think they've always been viable.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, this is what, it's almost $1 trillion. I mean, with the jobs in the Athanor that died, it probably did hit $1 trillion. But there's always desire to these fights, particularly in low sec.
Do the job materials drop when you kill an Athanor?
Yeah, no. So what's in a job is gone.
Okay.
All the reactions it was running are kaput.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Do you think that there's anything that you'd like CCP to do to encourage this kind of thing to happen more often?
I think, as I said, I think there's always a will for these fights. Absolutely, people want to be involved with them, but I do think the dreads themselves could be slightly cheaper in build. Knock a billion off the build price. Something like that would be a little bit. People would want to commit a bit more, potentially, particularly some of the smaller groups who might not have the. To have the indie capacity to replace dreads en masse, you need to be you're either doing it in a public structure and then your index costs are incredibly high, so it's very unprofitable and expensive, or you need to be involved in one of the larger low set groups or have some sort of deal in place. So making the build costs slightly cheaper, I think, would help smaller groups who might not have that be able to replace a bit easier.
So you mentioned the large groups, and one of the things that I'm looking at is I'm trying to remember when the last time like Nullsec has had a giant fuck off dread brawl. Because I don't think there's been one this month, but I can't remember when the last one was. And I'm trying to think of how we get this same action. Because it sounds like we should be able to do it just fine, right? Where's it come from?
Well, yeah, Nullsec has the capability, the production capability to produce the raw resources to build them, be able to build them in safety in huge numbers. It's a good one. Like, why isn't there more? I think it's probably just a numbers thing. There's just the groups are too large. So if you're having a dread ball, what's it going to be? Instead of having, I think we had 180 dreads on Team C here versus 100 or whatever on A or B on this battle report. Your nullsec dread brawls are are going to be many, many times that.
I mean, it's Eve nature to not want to lose, right? You know, it's Eve nature to not want to lose. I do wonder if there's an aspect of it's even harder to keep a secret in a larger group as well, which sort of dampens the ability for that kind of thing to happen the way it does in LowSec.
Yeah, because I mean, like, the larger the group, the easier it is to get a spy into, right? I mean,
Yeah, they're almost transparent in comparison, aren't they?
yeah, exactly. Like, you have looser recruitment standards, so you get that information in there. But even so, you would think that, they would try, that we would try more often to get these kinds of fights, maybe not where there's a bait, but where we can, just brawl out with our dreads.
I think you started to touch on it with the risk, the aversion to losing, and the risk of escalation, right? Like, I'm looking at this fight in Molden Heath, and I'm not sure if either side had the will to escalate it from here. Did either side have faxes or supers or titans on standby? I'm not sure. I don't think so. Maybe, but you're going to almost guarantee that with a nullsec dreadball, there's going to be the ability and the will to escalate. And who wants to lose those bigger toys? So the risk aversion just makes it so that the dread brawl doesn't even happen in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we probably saw this when Horde Sig was pushing catch, earlier last year, and had plenty of dreads there. There was plenty of dreads on the Imperium side. So I mean, it moved hundreds and hundreds of dreads in to stage nearby, and then nothing happened because here's the Goon kind of super fleet.
We got Lord Lapinu in chat says, and who wants to spend the next 15 hours in a slideshow. Now, I think if you were to look at the timeline from when the first cap died to when the last cap died on that battle report, you probably find that this 800-man fight with several hundred dreads, the capital fight portion of this happened in a very small amount of time for a large Eve fight.
Like an hour.
Yeah, this was well less than that. I mean, it was
less than an hour, well under an hour.
Two, 3 siege cycles, probably.
Yeah, not long at all. This was good few hundred dreads. That wasn't a 15-hour slideshow. tie-dye went up a bit as well. What did it? I mean, when I looked at one stage, because I was in the system as well, it got to about 50% tie-dye. Did it? I don't think it went much slower than that, though, did it?
No, the performance was good. Not too tie-dye.
Well, so maybe now that the biggest nullsec groups are split up from each other, nullsec could have some fights like this where it's 800-900 people instead of the thousands that we normally bring. There's something else
is mentioned. Antibatch says that is low-sec geography more compressed. So I guess that the theory there is that in low-sec it's a much smaller amount of space to pre-stage your dreads through than even the split blocks have now against each other. Does that make sense?
I'm gonna pull up the map and look at it because I feel like you're right. Yeah, no, it is definitely more compressed, for sure.
Just so we're clear, it was 20 minutes from the first cap to the last cap.
Thank you. There we go. A few hundred dreads, 20 minutes. So it's not. It's probably a lot more commitment of time in the prep than for the line members than it is for the actual fight. So if you have IBS, don't worry about visiting a low-sec dread brawl.
Not IBS. So the entirety of Molden Heath, I think you can see my cursor on the screen, is here. And with how compressed that region is, you could fit it into, Fountain, 4 times? That's crazy.
Well, we do have to consider that people came from several regions away as well. But yeah,
Sure, of course.
Malden Heath is quite a small region systems wise, and it's not it's fairly well connected to Hybertar, the metropolis, but it is one of the more disconnected regions in Empire space.
you see, not to, at the risk of straying too close to one of my favourite topics, perhaps if nullsec groups lived closer to each other, then these kind of dread brawls would be a little bit more viable.
Well, they could stage their dread caches nearby, certainly.
Look how close these two groups live together. Enemies. Look how close they live. They're only a few regions away.
I think you're being a little disingenuous by highlighting pandemic hoarders living in that particular splodge of red on the map.
Sure, they live in these particular splodges.
Well, that's a lot further all of a sudden, isn't it?
I mean, sure, it is. But they own this space. They could just stage there, goon stage here, bada bing, bada boom. It's easy. Start a war. Fuck's sake.
Pales
give the members what they want, I think. Yes.
That is a good point.
I mean, if that was if give the members what they want was entirely true, then why wouldn't the members be leaving to somewhere that does offer what they want?
Well, they do, don't they? They go to low sec groups eventually.
No, because they want more than just
wormholes.
They want more than just one thing. They also want safe crabbing space. And I do not know any low sec space that I could call safe crabbing space. But Pale does make a very good
You're welcome to come right in Derelict. We'll leave you alone, trust me.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. But Phantom, you're right.
Just list all of your ratting characters now.
Point.
Go on, sorry.
Well, it was about the point you were making about what Pale's saying in the chat there with the bubbles.
Yeah.
Once you have a dread bomb on grid and nullsec, it's on grid. Like, it's not getting off. So, like, in this case, if this was nullsec, every dread that Snuffed Out and friends brought would have probably died.
You say that, but I'm clicking on a random Revelation Navy issue right now. If evetools.org isn't breaking, let's go to Zed Killboard and pick that up instead.
Uh-oh.
If I take a look at a Rev Navy that died there, then we can clearly see that these Navy ships have 2 utility highs. The one I clicked on here happens to have 2 capital energy neutralizers, but is there a particular reason why you wouldn't fit one of those slots with a large smart bomb, which would do a lot in a blob of capital ships to clearing bubbles around? Am I missing something?
I mean, you do, but it's not as effective as you would think, I guess, especially when they can just put more bubbles out. Because, like, the smart bomb range is less than bubble range, obviously. So, if you really want to hold something down, you absolutely can. Plus, Hictors exist. So, I mean, all these things will just keep something trapped.
Well, this is a huge blow for the I don't like low sec because I can't bubble in it crowd, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think that not being able to bubble in low sec is one of its most defining characteristics. That's what makes the the Greased
the meta different.
That's what makes the Greased Warzone so interesting with the insurgencies and stuff. Like, being able to turn that into nullsec effectively is extremely interesting to me, but we don't ever see big fights like this over that kind of stuff. LB, what do you think? Do you think we should have those fights in Greased's war zones?
I mean, there's no reason for it. No, there's no structures or anything to fight over. And by the time you end up in the systems where you can fight over structures, the insurgency comes to an end and everything starts over again. It's also not really a PvP. Like, it's hard. It's difficult for me to say this, but it's not a very PvP centric gameplay style, it's farming. It's strictly LP farming, and the only ones doing any real PvP are few and far between. So I don't think you're going to see capital brawls, dread brawls on low sec structures in any pirate insurgency war zones.
But I do think if there was a situation in which a timer was coming out that people were coming to, I don't think the low sec groups would be against dropping just because it's bubbleable.
Well,
I think you'd see cheaper pods, is what you'd see.
Yeah,
you wouldn't...
there'd be a few less amulet pods maybe, but
yeah.
I think the desire would still be there that people would want to have the dread brawl.
But do you think that they should? So that was really more my question, is would you like to see something in that war zone that is worth dropping caps over? Or like an extension
for sure.
to the insurgencies that makes it so it's possible?
Yep, the insurgencies have always had mechanics in it where you can use capitals. The open complexes are there. You can sino into those, but unfortunately right now that doesn't exist. To like the juice is not worth the squeeze. We'll just say that.
Yeah. That seems to be a lot of like the whole mentality behind inactivity within EVE Online. It's just the juice is often bitter and tastes of piss, and so you just don't want to squeeze it sometimes, you know. Sorry, that was bad.
Hold on, let me write that down as my next alliance name.
Bitter and full of piss. Oh, sorry. Well, not to completely change the topic, but completely changing the topic. This weekend is the first of the CSM summits, right? It starts it. So our friends in CSM19, you can see Luke is not here. He was on a plane, obviously quite jet lagged, I would imagine. Phantomites obviously joined us because he...
Come on.
Go on.
I'm so sorry, Phantomite. I couldn't. I just saw somebody.
I don't think you are.
I just saw.
I don't
Basil in
think
the
you are.
chat,
Sorry.
and I had to give a little shout out to the loveliness. But anyways, so the summit is happening, and I want to talk about what we expect out of this. Like, what do you guys think the CSM are going to bring to the table? What's CCP going to bring to the table? Where's the roadmap for the year? What are we looking forward to?
One thing I fully expect the CSM to be bringing to the table as perhaps the most important issue of the day, and something that I indeed hope that CCP themselves understand is important, is obviously inflation. I can go on a microphone anytime and everybody will expect me to talk about Ansiblex, but I do believe that inflation is the... Yeah, I do believe that inflation is probably adversely affecting every single one of us in the game at an obviously increasing rate.
Well, and how would they curb it at this point? Like, how did it get this bad to start out with?
Too many activities that produce too much force to disk.
Yep.
It's a very simple. It's a very simple thing.
Overprinting of ISK makes ISK value go down, which means prices go up. So
yeah, and I tell you what, people who aren't taking part in the money making, activities that produce this more risk that's causing the problem are the ones that suffer the most because their income hasn't necessarily gone up at the same time.
Yeah, like I'm sitting here thinking, like, what extreme money making activities are we talking about here? Because I don't see them where I live.
Oh, well, you don't undock. That's where all the ISK making normally happens. But
all right, I deserve that one.
You deserve that one, yeah.
I deserve that one.
But we have one of the elephant in the room here is the largely made up of Ishtar spinning that had a massive raw ISK buff as a as a sort of counter to a nerf, and then they undid the nerf but not the buff to the ISK making.
Right. But I don't see, so like, while you talk about having more ISK in the game is making prices go up, I think that having less minerals available, less people mining them, less people building ships out of those minerals is contributing just as much.
Well, if for those of us who've been reading the absolute vomit that is r/Eve, it appears that miners are making a fair amount of money, and they're very happy with the amount of money they're making, unless they are longing for the classic Rorqual era.
Well, of course they're longing for the classic Rorqual era. The problem with mining to miners is that it's tedious, and it used to not be tedious.
Well, I think it's always been tedious, but the rewards were higher.
No, it was less tedious during the Rorqual era because you could just set on a giant rock and you could sit there for an hour, mine the thing.
Okay.
You didn't have to move.
So,
and you're just hanging out on comms with your buds, you're in your Rorks, watching Netflix.
I mean, there's obviously nothing stopping these miners from hanging out on comms with their buds. They just have to interact with the game client more so than previously.
Right, and then they have to go find anomalies that have increasingly smaller rocks.
I mean, I've repeatedly seen people tossing around 100 mil an hour on for their mining, which doesn't seem too shabby.
Who is throwing around 100 mil an hour, and how many accounts are they running when they're mining for that much?
I think the implication was per account.
Per account?
Yeah. I mean,
sheesh. Maybe I don't know anything about mining then.
The discourse here over the last week is that the people that are crying hardest are the people that want to run 20 accounts simultaneously, whereas like a dude with his 1 or 2 counts working with his mates are having a whale of a time in comparison.
That's the issue, right? Is when we remove tedium, then we increase the ability to scale it up.
Yeah. I mean, ISK coming into the game is ultimately limited by how much effort the players are willing to put in. It's not something that a lot of people want to hear, but although this is a video game that people are here to play for fun, if there wasn't tedium in making money, it would be hyperinflation.
People will pay the amount that they can afford to pay, and if they have extra ISK, the price will go up, regardless of the amount of minerals available.
Yeah, and we have stuff like the price of Plex being an indicator of what it actually is the price of Plex is always the same, and it's pegged to effort, not to anything else in the game. The price of Plex is always the same in terms of effort.
Maybe so. Well, LB, how about you? What do you want to see from the summit here? What do you hope they bring?
I would like to see, remember back in the day we used to get the summit minutes? Someone would make the minutes for this. I don't remember the last time we've seen minutes come out of a summit meeting. I'd like to see a return of that so we can see some sort of idea of what's occurring in Iceland and not finding out about it 5 years after when someone's NDA expires and then we figure out exactly what happened at the 2025 summit.
That's interesting because, minutes have been, when minutes have been available, they've kind of been hit and miss as well. Like sometimes you really get to hear something that encourages you, and sometimes you're able to draw no conclusions whatsoever from the minutes because of, obviously, NDA, but also to some extent just, these CSM members are busy debating these topics. Sometimes it's clear that they've been doing their CSM job so hard that they may have forgotten to write particularly detailed notes.
Well, I think they should.
Yeah, the redaction portion. A transcript. I would like a transcript. That would be good because I was just going to say, like, sometimes the minutes can reflect what your CSM members are actually doing if they're actually putting in any sort of effort in these meetings, right? If you see, you voted for block member XYZ and there's no mention of them whatsoever in the minutes, then maybe you start to question, well, was that vote that I put into that person, was that worth it? Maybe I should change my tactics next CSM election.
Right, exactly.
I don't think so. They'll just vote for whoever they're told to again.
Well, see, that might be something we could fix, right? Because you vote for block member A, and not to say that this person's bad, but let's talk about Zintage and Akka, right? Let's say you voted for Zintage because the Empire told you to, and you turn out Zintage only cries about dreads because he doesn't know how to fit them. You don't want to vote for Zintage next time because he's an absolute moron. And you don't know that.
This is all hypothetical, of course. This is all just an example you're making up.
Just an example that I'm making up, not actually saying these things about Zintage. Love Zintage a little bit. But what I'm saying is that could be a possibility to where the person you've elected doesn't know jack about shit, and they expect to continue to be elected. But we'll never know because all we see is what CCP shows us, which I don't think is right.
Well, I think that this, I'd kind of, from B, what you were saying, I'd kind of like to go a step further, and I would like to, even if it takes like a year later, something like that, I would like to see the videos of the weekly meetings. Or perhaps at a more limited level, I would like to see the CSM's response. I said video of the CSM's responses as they were told about an upcoming feature. I would like to see whether they supported it, whether they didn't support it, what they brought up. I want to see if these people know what they're talking about when they get presented with new mechanics to the game.
That would be amazing. And that
I think,
is something
I
that
think
could
it's more
be solved.
transparency. Yeah, it would be beneficial overall. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do understand that CCP can't tell us about a number of things, even if it's a project that never came to fruition, because they want to keep that on the back burner, but which they may use another time, something like that. But I also do understand that it would be a lot of work for somebody to redact these videos, or indeed an accurate transcript.
No redactions.
We have half a dozen. We have half a dozen. We have half a dozen community devs who are on the payroll. I'm sure we can find one of them who can, snip out the redacted stuff and publish something.
Or even perhaps the CSM members themselves could do the redactions and give it to CCP to OK and publish.
So why do they have to redact it? Like, what is the CSM getting advanced knowledge of that is so important that it has to be redacted at this point?
Things that have significant economic changes to the game that people would be able to capitalize on.
Even something as simple as a ship balancing change can sway the meta, which sways the economic balance of markets and industrialists.
Although I suppose if you're showing the video after the feature has launched, then in theory, largely that doesn't become a matter anymore.
Right. That would have to be the key, but then the problem becomes, if we talk about change A, which is coming in 2 weeks, and then that leads into a discussion of change B, which is 8 weeks down the road, which leads to a discussion with change C, which is 8 months down the road. Now you have to cut and slice that discussion into pieces that can be released and not released.
And even though this is my suggestion that these videos come out, I can tell you from experience, as a counter to that again, that these meetings are not on one single subject. These meetings could address 1 or 20 different EVE Online subjects in one go, so it becomes very difficult.
But the thing is that when it comes to like ship balance and stuff like that, things that can have great economic impacts, CSM members shouldn't be told those things anyways. They should find out just the same time as the rest of us does, because that takes out an entire avenue of potentially getting banned for some bullshit like what happened to Brisk and his friends back years ago.
I do agree with that, really, but I'd like that to go hand in hand with regular balance changes.
Yes,
I think they should constantly be tweaking the ships. There's no reason they can't just change numbers every so often.
Even if it's just tiny, just to really tweak.
Because if you're doing that as a consistent thing, constantly changing what the meta is going to be, what a change of a certain ship, you haven't told the CSM about, might be broken, but then, next month there's some changes here, it's another new ship. I'd love to see more changes to ships as just a regular thing they do.
Well, I mean, as a counter to that, I will say that I do know that CSM members have been integral in basically every single CSM in the ship balance changes, the weapons and ships and other modules.
You're telling me CSM18 killed the Munin?
They came up with the exact Navy. What's going on here?
Somebody had to.
What I mean is, like, I mean, okay, I mean, even as an example, even after my CSM term, you can still talk to devs because you still have an NDA, and you can still recommend and help them through with very specific ship balance changes that are then implemented a little bit later. So the CSM does bring these things, and quite often in quite some specific detail themselves. If it was just CCP doing the balance changes and then telling the CSM after it was about to go out, then we wouldn't have nearly as many.
But are those so? You're talking about like after the fact. Is there like a public meeting that the ex-CSM members have that gets recorded and transcribed that I'm missing? Or like
No, that was in my experience, it was totally
random,
me to
hey,
devs.
Yeah, exactly. It's a one-on-one thing. So that wouldn't even be involved in any of the transcribing or recording anyways.
No, but
so
the vast majority of these ship balance things do go through the CSM.
Yeah, sure, but do they go through the CSM in these big meetings, or do they go in one-off conversations that wouldn't have been recorded in the meetings anyways? Okay. What I'm saying is that CCP has paid for 12 people to go and stay in Iceland for a week to talk with them about their video game, and I would like to know what they're talking to them about when they get back. I want to know what they talked about while they were there. And the meetings, these kinds of meetings should be tailored around that kind of transparency. If it's going to be some big game-breaking economic change, then don't talk about it in the summit meeting that's going to be broadcast out to the world or whatever. Talk about it in a private meeting, but at least give us something to look at.
I think that, your enthusiasm on this matter probably leads into, well, Puce asked in chat, Redline, what's the point in the CSM?
I mean, to me, the CSM is, they're elected based on the amount of players that they can provide support to. The amount of players they can be a voice for. So that's why we always have so many nullsec candidates, is because there's so many nullsec players. And I will answer the question, why is the CSM Summit for publicity all of a sudden? It's not, but the point of the CSM is to be that focus group and to be able to convey our thoughts to CCP in a way that we cannot. And we need to know that the people that we elect to the CSM are conveying our thoughts properly, right? That's the thing, because if you voted for Young Puke 2 because of X, Y, and Z, and you find out that you should have voted for Phantomite because of A, B, and C, then next year you'll vote for Phantomite instead. Now, that's not going to change the block candidates, and it never will, and I get that. But these other candidates, like Seto, McFlightmaster, Ariel, they could be changed, if they don't follow that line. And you're right. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be discussing classified changes as well. But what I'm telling you is that there's a place for both. There's a place for transparency and there's a place for secrecy. If it's a big, giant, game-breaking change, then sure, be secretive about it. But I would imagine that a majority of the changes that could be discussed are not giant, game-breaking economic changes They are instead, how do we make it so people in nullsec want to kill each other more often? And things like that.
Make them live closer together.
Okay, Ansplex guy, we get it.
But you know, I think that something that we can probably all agree on is that we would like to know in a fair amount more detail how our CSM members performed at the end of their term.
Yes. But I want to know, like, right now, kind of thing. I know, it's
get some midterm elections going.
Well, no, nothing like that. Nothing like that. It's just like, I want to know, I want to have that advance notice, right? So I would really like for a roadmap to come out of the CSM Summit this year, because I would like to see what's coming up. I've always loved to see, what CCP is planning, and I know it's hard to put it out there because then we have expectations, but let's be honest, what's wrong with having expectations of a game developer who you pay at least $20 a month to play their video game? It's okay to have some expectations, right?
At least $20 a month is really a skill issue, but...
what do you mean it's really a skill issue?
I mean, something that we is all within our power is something that Pew says again, right? Is there's nothing stopping us from asking our CSM candidates what they have brought up. It is not under NDA for a candidate to tell you what they have requested. It is under NDA for them to say whether it's going to be actioned or not, and it is under NDA for them to say what another CSM has said. So these CSM members are all perfectly capable of saying, yeah, I've brought that up. See, like Drake goes to the summit and he says, and he says, I want the Omen Navy issue to have a 10% better capacitor. He can tell us that. There's nothing stopping him from telling us that he has requested that.
But how do we confirm it? That's the thing, is that online is a game of deceit.
How can you trust your elected officials?
How can you trust your elected officials? That's the real question. That requires.
I mean, this is the ultimate. This is the ultimate trust-based mechanic in Eve, right? Is elections.
I feel like I'm wearing my tinfoil hat already, and I don't like where this is going. Honestly, I gotta be honest.
So if anybody in the chat has a particular CSM member that they would like some more transparency from, we'll try and get them on and see if they're up for it.
What I was thinking of is like some sort of a connection point between the CSM and the community, where polls are done that only the CSM can vote in. And it's just like opinions on changes and things that are introduced. Perhaps it could also be a place where CSM posts things that they have requested from CCP at a meeting or in some other case to actually have that transparency, and people could come there and see, those transparent opinions. But the thing is that there is nothing that requires a CSM representative to be transparent. And that's the problem, I think, because, these black candidates, they're just going to get voted in either way. The other candidates, they're going to get voted in based on how many people they can rally. But then again, like I say, there's not going to be any way for anybody to confirm that anybody's saying and doing what they said that they were going to.
Your concern here is that one of these space politicians may, during election season, be a man of the people, going and working in the dirt with the farmers out there, and then immediately getting into power and filling their entire purpose with only the desires of the rich.
And
that's right.
Now that I'm thinking about exactly what my concerns are, I'm gonna hold my head in shame for a moment, and we're just gonna move on to the next topic.
But yes, I mean, there's plenty that CCP can do to add some transparency. There's plenty that the CSM members can do to add some transparency. But us, as outsiders, we have something that we can all do as well, is that we can ask them. We can literally message these people. We can at them. Most of them are in the official EVE Discord, and there is a CSM channel in there. You can talk to your elected officials anytime you like. Whether they respond or not is up to them, but that might tell you all you need to know.
Phantomite's very responsive, by the way.
Remember that for next year.
Oh dear. But yeah, we've got this Plex sale to help fight inflation in EVE Online. Has a Plex sale ever made a notable dent in the Plex price in this game?
Hasn't it? Like, isn't that one of the
Doesn't
single,
it do the opposite?
isn't that
Well,
the
'cause the
single
thing is-
greatest mover of Plex prices?
I mean,
Plex
it's
sales?
expected. Plex sales at this stage are basically like clockwork. So any serious Plex buyers are just waiting for them anyway, leading to the same amount of Plex being sold anyway, but with less profit to CCP. I mean, sometimes, when they have a sale on Omega or a sale on Plex, sometimes I feel a little insulted that they do it so regularly. I feel insulted on the behalf of everybody who pays full price for their game time. When CCP is always going to reduce it. No, well, I mean, I buy, for example, I buy a year at a time for my accounts.
Jesus, that's confidence.
Hey,
That's
well,
a
hey,
lot
listen,
of
I haven't taken a break from EVE Online in 18 years, so I don't think it's misplaced confidence.
That is fair. That is fair. Yeah. When you
The man knows what he likes.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
And it's EVE Online and Factorio, but I only had to pay for Factorio once.
Right.
Well,
hey.
twice because of the expansion, but there we go.
Damn, now I've lost my segue. Because you wanted to talk about this, and I wanted to talk about it too, and I had a perfect segue, but you wouldn't stop talking.
Do you want me to go back
Let me
and give you
segue.
the perfect situation again?
I can't. We can't go back. So instead, I'm just going to awkwardly transition to the other
Well, hold on.
screen.
Before you transition, the roadmap that you'd mentioned,
Yes,
I think
sir.
there's a roadmap coming in the next couple of weeks. I think CCP Swift was on an interview with Oz.
Okay.
The pre CSM Summit interview, and he had mentioned that a roadmap was coming shortly,
Hey,
the
there
next
we
week or
go.
so. So
so
watch for that.
So a roadmap basically almost immediately after the summit, which
Yep.
what we hope means is that the CSM had input into what the eventual roadmap was.
Fingers crossed.
Potentially.
Absolutely.
Fingers crossed they just tell us what they talked about. But anyways, I am going to transition us to a segment that I call You Wouldn't Believe This Happened in EVE Online. And the first thing in this segment...
Or how about Capsuleers do the funniest things?
Capsuleers do the funniest thing. So, let's
New Eden's
talk,
funniest home videos.
Let's talk through
Yes.
this. So what we're seeing on the screen here is a Ragnarok available on the Hypernet. Now, Thursday Preacher here has listed this Ragnarok for just under 6.6 million ISK per ticket. And this person, Lacey Jane, purchased 30 of the tickets, won the Ragnarok. And you'll never guess what Lacey Jane did. Lacey Jane...
I mean, this is a story of utter failure to enjoy the game to its fullest extent, right?
gave the Ragnarok back.
Oh my god.
That's reprehensible behavior.
Do you know what? Because that's so against the spirit of the game. I think that the GM should ban this player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man. Well, obviously, on the panel here, we would definitely have kept the Ragnarok. And I'm sure that the chat would keep the Ragnarok. So that's why this is perfect for this segment. You'd never believe this happened in EVE Online. You never would.
I mean, you know, there are some similar. There have always been similar events to this. Most often in contracts, right? People not typing quite enough zeros. I do know somebody who reasonably recently purchased a Shapash for 1.2 billion ISK from contracts, And then, very optimistically, the person who had accidentally contracted it for so little, they did send a mail asking if they could have it back. And so my friend sent them an incursus for 1.2 billion ISK, and they accepted it.
Ooh.
That's the correct. That's the correct.
That's how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's how EVE Online's meant to be played.
I mean, in EVE Online terms, in a way, it's a heartwarming story.
Yeah.
It lets you know that the overall reason that all of us are here is alive and well.
The soul of the game is still alive in some way.
In some people's appropriately cold, dead hearts.
Indeed.
Well, I think, it's been very encouraging to see the year's first very large Dread Brawl. And, it's smaller than some, but I tell you what, it's up there with what we expect LowSec to deliver us. What we expect LowSec to deliver us, like clockwork, 3 times a year.
That's good enough for me. It's good enough for me.
So, here's to next week. Here's to the next LowSec Dread Brawl, and here is the gauntlet thrown down for Nullsec to prove that they can do better with their more money, more production capabilities, and more players. We believe in you. Do not disappoint us and the rest of the game.
Again. And again.
Still.
Oh dear.
I don't want to do.
Hey B, do you have any
Nullsec cowards pull? That's mean.
B, do you have any final encouragement for Nullsec to get out there and go get it?
I mean, I think you should just find one of these low-sec brawls and counter drop it. Look at this, 2 pages of Zernitras, at least. I mean, how can you not resist that?
Rav, 2 pages of Zernitras is a good Alt Alliance name.
That's a pretty good one.
I'm making it now.
I tell you what, while you write down your alternate alliance name, what's next for you? Or is that OPSEC?
Absolutely OPSEC, mate.
Oh, okay. Guess we'll find out what's next for you on the show next time it happens, right?
I'm sure it's got to do with more killing dreads and things of the sort. I hope it does. And we'll have you back on if you do. Gauntlet to you, sir. Do it again.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Thanks for being on. I guess, before I hand over, for your final words, Redline, I'd say, come to LowSec, everyone. It's clearly the best place in EVE.
LowSec is the best place in EVE.
It is.
You're a giant.
It's bloody good.
Giant baby. Giant babies playing LowSec. And on that note, there's this guy. I think he's playing a LowSec. We're gonna send the stream over to him. But I think
don't go stream sniping him now, guys.
Yeah, don't do that. That's mean. But
that's fine. Explosions are content.
It's true. It's true. And we'll see you next week for another riveting episode of Untethered. And obviously, when you get to Badman Larry's stream, I don't know. He's in a wormhole. He's in a wormhole doing something.
Oh, he's safe enough then. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got instant local. But we'll see you next week, same time, same place, for the same show. And maybe like 30% less Ansiblex.
He's coming around. It's only taken about 4 months.
We'll see. Anyways, now we're waving. See you next time, guys.